Hello, today we're gonna build a basic form using Shadcn forms and React Hook forms. This form will be used to create new bank accounts in our finance dashboard application. Let's jump into it.
Okay, so let's start building this bank accounts page. To start off, we will need a calendar component to give this page like a basic layout. So let's go ahead and open Shadcn components card, copy the installation command, and in the terminal we can run this. All right, let's take a look. The card component was installed. So now we can copy these basic usage example components and we can open the bank accounts page itself. So let's import those basic components. Okay, so we can start from wrapping everything with a card component. Then we will need a card header in which we will have a card title component where we can say bank accounts. Alright, everything is updating live. We can see the progress. After the header, we will need a card content, which we will fill up a little bit later. So just for now, let's say simple to do. And in the header itself, we also want to include the add button, where the user can click that button, then the dialog will open. There will be a bank accounts form where you will fill account number, balance, and will be able to click create or submit or whatever we will call it. So let's do that. Div, let's say class name, flex and justify between, and a couple more divs. So one will be empty, just so that the button would be aligned to the right side. And the other one will hold our bank accounts form button and the whole like dialog logic. So let's say div class name flex no wrap. And now we can import our bank accounts form component, which we will be creating in a second. Bank accounts form. All right. We won't need card footer or card description as of right now, so remove that and fix the ESLint issues. So now we can create the bank accounts form component itself. Let's create a new component, which we will call bank accounts form. Let's say const bank accounts form, no props for now. Return for now just a simple span with some random text so that we would get rid of this error. So let's fix the ESLint issues. Let's go back and import this newly created component. Add import from bank accounts form. All right, so our bank accounts form component is being displayed already. So now we need to install some more Shadcn UI components, and we will start with the dialog. So dialog. So basically the idea is that we will have an add button or add new. Upon clicking, the dialog will be shown, and there the user can like enter the bank account's number and the balance and save the changes or add a new bank account. So let's install this component. All right, the dialog was installed. Let's double check the UI components directory. Dialog is here. So we'll say we want a dialog. And we import that from our components UI dialog. This one we can remove. We want a dialog trigger, which basically will be our button. So inside the dialog trigger, we need the button itself. So it will be button. Let's give the size of small, and the title will be add. So let's import the button again from UI components, format the code, After the trigger, we need some dialog content itself. So dialog content, let's import it again. Let's give some size class names. Now we can say dialog header and dialog title. So the dialog title will be something like create new bank account. And let's import the component. After the dialog header, we will be implementing our form. But for now, let's add some random text to just look how it looks right now. Okay, so let's format the code again. And let's double check. So the add button appeared, as you can see. And if I would click it, we can see the dialog title, create new bank account, and this random text. Oh, and also just before jumping into the form creation itself, let's just rename this component from bank accounts form to bank account form, since we will be creating just a single bank account and not like many of them at once. So we'll rename the file, and also let's update the import. Bank account form and bank account form. It should be good to go. All right, everything is working. So we can close this one. And also when working with the dialogues or the modals, I usually like to set them to be open by default so that it would be easier to implement them, and you would not need to like click the button every time you want to see how it looks. So let's just say dialog open is true, so it should open by himself. Yeah, and now we can like add whatever updates we want, and we don't need to open the dialog again and again. So now it's time to create a form. So let's head over to the Shadcn documentation and move from there. They have a lot of like description, how the forms can be difficult to implement, etc. And let's just go straight to the installation. Okay, so let's install the Shadcn form. All right, form component was installed. Let's double check. Yep, we have a form and the label. Nice. So we can close this one and let's see what they have. Create a form schema. So they are using the Zod library for schema validation. Zod actually is a very powerful tool. So I'm very glad that Shadcn is recommending using it. There are also other alternatives like Yap, but I really like the Zod. So let's go ahead and create our form schema. Let's do it right here. So const form schema equals the object, and let's import the z from Zod. So it will be an object. Basically in the form schema, now what we have to do is define all of our field names and provide like the types for them and some validation rules. So we will have an account number, which will be string. Let's say that we want the minimum length for the account number to be at least one symbol. Of course, it should be bigger, but I don't know internationally what is the minimum account number length. So let's just say 1. Now we can also provide a validation message in case like this validation is failing. So we can say new object message, which would say account number is empty. Also, we would like to limit the max length of the account number. So for the max, let's say, I don't know, maybe 50. Same again, let's give an error message in case the user entered a lot more characters. So let's say something like account number should be shorter then 50 characters. Alright, so for the starters account number, we'll have the min and max length validation. We will add some more validations a bit later, but for now it will be good. The next field in our form will be balance. And the balance, again, will be a string. You could ask why string, why not a number, but I will show you why in a second. Another way how we can add a validation message for ZOD, we can do the same thing in the string parameters. We can say that the balance should be required, and if it's empty, let's display that balance is empty. And for the balance, we will also add some more validations. For now, it will be good just to have a basic validation. Let's format the code. So we do have now our form schema, which will be used to validate the user's input. All right, let's take a look at the step 2. Use the use form hook from React hook form to create a form. Now let's double check, maybe by any chance the Shadcn CLI installed the React hook form automatically, and yes, it did. So we don't need to do anything about it. So we need to use this hook now. Const form equals use form, which we will import from React hook form. Now we can provide the types for the form using the ZOD library. You can read more about ZOD in the ZOD documentation, but basically we can say that infer the types from the form schema which we declared here. So it will be z infer type of form schema. And now we also need to provide some more things. So it will be resolver, which basically tells the React hook form to use the ZOD resolver for validation. So ZOD resolver, and the parameter is form schema. ZOD resolver should be imported from hook form resolvers ZOD. Let's do that. Then we can declare the default values for our form fields. So default values, an object, and account number will be an empty string. And for the balance, I will leave it empty. The second step is to define a submit handler, basically a method which will be called on the form submit. So let's say const on submit, which will be a type of submit handler. Again, let's infer the types from the schema. So z infer type of form schema. The parameter will be form values with the type inferred form schema. And for now, let's just only console log the values so we could see that everything is working. One more thing. By default, React hook form does the validations only on submit, but I would like to show the error messages for the user on change, like when you are typing some account number and if the length is bigger than needed, show the message right away. So to change that, we can give a mode, and the possible values are like on blur, on change, on submit, on touched, or all. So the default is on submit, but I would like to set it to on change. On change. So now it's time to build the form itself. Let's grab the suggested imports, which is like button, form, form control, description, etc. So let's copy them and paste it here. Oh, the button we already have imported. Let's format the code. All right, cannot find module input, so we also need to install that one. So let's just quickly open up the input documentation and grab the npm command. Install it. All right. Now it should be resolved. Yes, it is. So let's go back to the form example and let's implement the form itself. So let's open our application so that we could see the progress. Now, instead of this random text, let's say form, and let's spread all the form props. Now, inside of that, we need a HTML form itself. Let's also give some spacings, so space Greek 4. And now we can start creating our form input fields. So it will be a form field. The name will be account number. So this name property must match the ones we have defined in the form schema before. So the first input field will be account number. Let's switch the places. Also, let's pass a control prop from the form object. Since the form field and all like the form components from Shadcn are wrappers for React hook form, so it's a little bit easier to like create new fields, because if you would open a React hook form documentation and if I would search for controlled inputs, you can see that the code is very similar, but they are using like different components from React hook form itself. So this form field is wrapping React hook form components. Therefore, we still need to provide form control and other props. So for the render part, we need to provide a function which will receive a field prop, and we need to return the JSX component. So let's say form item, form label. So form label will be account number. And now we can say form control. So it will be for the input itself. As you can see, the label already appeared and disappeared. So inside the control, we want to add an input with a placeholder, let's say semi-random string, and let's spread the field for the props. Our input has appeared. So this field render prop holds things like field dot name on change function value, reference disabled on blur, and other things. So to avoid naming all of them and passing as prop, we just spread the object like that. You can read more about that in the React hook form documentation about controlled inputs. Alright, so we have our account number input field. Now we also need a balance. So let's copy and paste this one. So the name this time will be balance. Label again will be balance. And we also don't need a placeholder in here. And of course we could also say like the type for this input is number. Now if we would look into our current form, like I can enter account number, and in the balance input field I cannot enter, as you see, any letters. I can enter any numbers or like plus minus signs. I can do like dot and some more numbers. I can do a comma. No, I cannot do a comma. Basically, I can enter any type of numbers, but what I would like to do, I would like to have a dedicated special custom component for currency inputs. So let's just do that. I will open up our components directory and UI. And in here, I will create a new component named currency input. All right. let's say const currency input, no props for now, and return and export default currency input. Now I won't be creating this component from the very scratch. I will use a small library called React currency input field. The main reason is that this library already has a bunch of validations and features baked in, and it's quite small. So it allows abbreviations. For example, you can enter 1K and get 1000. It allows prefixes and suffixes. It automatically inserts group separators and similar features. So let's go ahead and install this library. So npm install React currency input field. Open a terminal. All right. So let's close that one. And now we can say return currency input field. Let's import it from React currency input field. So I imported the component itself, which is exported as default, and the props. So for the props, we will accept a value, and I can define the type, currency input props, and on value change. And that's basically all we're gonna need from these props. So right now we can provide some more things in here. Let's say value equals value. Let's say allow decimals. Decimal separator will be a comma. Group separator will be a space. Decimals limit will be 2. As for max length, we can say, I don't know, let's say 15. And on value change, again, on value change. So we can even like group them together. Not that it changes anything, but still. And one more thing we need is it has a method which is called transform raw value. So here we will provide a function which will receive a raw value, and we want to return a value string and replace dots with commas. That is required basically if the user is entering either comma or dot. In either case, the result will be always with the comma. All right, so let's format the code. So now instead of this simple input field, let's add our newly created component, currency input, and import from the components. And we need to provide a value, which will be value. And also we need to provide on value change prop. And this will be a function which will call on change with the value. So these two things we can destruct from the field. We can do like that. And let's take a value and on change. Oh, and as you can see, our newly created component is looking a bit strange. So we'll provide a class name, and we will copy the input styles from the Shadcn component. So just pick these styles from here, copy every single one of them. Oops. Okay, let's copy that, close, class name, paste, and voila, it's looking the exact same way as the regular Shadcn component. Okay, so now I think we can add one more thing,
which is basically required in order to have a proper form. And that is, we need a submit button. So that we can do in a dialog footer. And in here we can say button with the type of button. Also, we can say that this button should be disabled if, for example, the form state is invalid. So form.form state is valid and negation in the front. So it will be disabled if the form is invalid. And lastly, we need an onClick handler. So onClick, we will call form.handle submit, and we will pass our previously created onSubmit function. Okay, and the title for the button, let's say, will be confirm. And the button appeared. As you can see, it's disabled because the balance is still empty. So let's just try and refresh the whole page to start from scratch. And now we can check whether or not our validation of the form is working. So if you remember, our validation is so that account number should be not empty. It should have at least one symbol and less than 50. For the balance, it simply needs to be not empty. So let's try that out. So any account number and any balance. So 12. And the confirm button was enabled. If I would delete the balance, we would get error message balance is empty. If I would enter again, it will enable as well. And as you can see, this component does really good stuff. For example, if I would enter 100, it automatically adds a space as a group separator. If I would try to press a dot, it will automatically replace it with a comma. It will only allow for me to enter 2 decimals at the end. So that's basically why I chose to install this mini library. Okay, so let's, for example, say 1000, and let's say my test account number. And now we will try to submit the form. We have a console log there, so let's open our DevTools. All right, confirm. And we get all the form values with the account number and the balance. And again, if the form is not valid, we cannot submit. So far our form is getting in shape. We already have our 2 needed input fields for account number and the balance. The validation is working, the unsubmit is working as well. The next step, what we can do is to actually close the dialog when we confirm the form. So in order to do that, we need to save isOpen state in our React component. So let's say const is dialog open and set is dialog open, use state, which will be a boolean with the default value as false. So in the submit function, we can say set is dialog open false. And for the dialog itself, the open prop should be using the state. So is dialog open. And also we can say on open change, call our set is dialog open function. This onOpenChange function will be called in case, for example, user is clicking outside of the dialog window. Okay, so let's try one more time. Account number, some balance value, confirm. The dialog was successfully closed. Nice. But there is a small problem. For example, if I would choose to add one more bank account and would press add, as you can see, the old form values are still there. To resolve that, we can have a small use effect, which should be called whenever is dialog state
has changed. And inside of this use effect, all we would need to do is form.reset, which basically resets the form values. So let's save and double check again. Alright, so first try, the form is new. Let's try to submit it. Confirm. One more time. The form is empty. So that is fixed. Now we can add one more validation to our balance input field. I would like for the users to be able to input from minus 99999 to like plus 99999. So let's just do that. You could say that, all you need to do is provide min and max values. The problem is that it's a string, and our balance input numbers has a separator with a comma and not with a dot. And in JavaScript, there is a little bit of problem with that. So for example, if I would try to parse float with the 11.11, as you can see, the result is good. But if I would say 11,11, the result is only 11. So for that, we need to do a little bit more work. But the Zod library is very powerful. So one way you can refine your validations is with a refine method. So it will be a function which gets our value. The value will be string. So in here, we can first convert our string to a proper JavaScript number and then check whether or not this number is within the range we need. So we can add a couple helper functions in our number utils. So the first one would be export const convert currency to number. This function will accept an amount of type string and will return, of course, a number. And in here we will say parse float and replace the comma with a dot. All right? So this function will return us the proper converted number. One more function we need is to check whether or not the number is within ranges. So let's export one more function and call it is amount within range. It will accept an amount of type number. And now we can do the comparison. So firstly, let's define the constant for the max value we want. So export const max value. And let's say like that. And then in this function, we can check that our amount is between minus max value and plus max value. So let's do that. All right, so this one will return a boolean. And now we can use these functions. So in the refine, all we have to do is to return a boolean if the string is correct. So is amount within range. This accepts only a number. So firstly, we need to convert currency to number and pass our value string. So this will do a check. And in case validation fails, we can provide a custom message. And we can say something like balance should be between minus max value and max value. All right, let's format the code. Okay, so let's test this out. So let's try to add some numbers. And as you can see, we get the proper error message. And if I would like copy this value, it's okay. And if I would increase it, we get an error message. The same applies with a negative value.
Thank you for watching. Hit that subscribe button if you like this video. And in the next video, we're gonna finish this form. And by finish, I mean we will implement the backend part, the APIs, the backend calls, and we will actually save this bank account into the database. So see you there.